Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the Paramount number 441 door closer. This is a back check cush arm non-hold open. They call it a cush. A cush non-hold open in a Duranodic finish. 441 is a grade 1 closer. You'll probably recognize it as soon as I show it to you. BC, back check, C for cush, DU for Duranodic. This video is going to go over the closer. We're going to start with a visual review, a dimensional review. We'll go over the particulars. We're going to hop into the product brochure and then the installation instructions. So first, a visual review. The business end of this closer. Like I said, you might recognize it. Cast iron closer body. Very heavy. This closer with the cush arm is 13 3/4 pounds. Dark bronze, the majority of this is all, of course, concealed by the cover, but not all of it because that spindle you can see. Let's take some generic dimensions. Overall width of the body, about 11 1/4. Overall height, about 2 3/4. Overall thickness, about 1 and 2 inch, about 2 inch. Now the important thing is the location of the screw holes, which if you are matching an existing, you're going to have 2 holes on one end, 1 hole on the other end, okay? We're going to talk about all the valve control on here as well. The center to center of these screws is on the template, but it appears to be 1 inch. And I just want to jump ahead and confirm that. Yeah, it is indeed 1 inch. So the bottom line is, jumping ahead, if you have a footprint that has 2 holes at the tip of my ring finger that are 1 inch center and then 3 inches over, and then 2 1/4 inch vertically, then you know you've got the right footprint of door closer. Okay, real heavy body. What's nice about this is it has everything that the maintenance person needs to know to get yourself an adjustment going. Okay, we'll go over that in a moment more closely. This will feature a cover, a full plastic cover that of course you want to have installed. That's the dark bronze finish on this cover. One of those 2 knockouts are going to go away depending on what hand is being installed. Okay, they're perforated, you can just knock those out. A couple of screws will go down to the body, or a screw. 2 screws will go down to the body to secure it. Screw here and screw here. That will line up with the door closer body. I've got it obviously turned around backwards. Okay. You're going to get your arm. This is a cush arm. This is not the regular arm. You want to use this every single time you can when you have a parallel arm type of mount. A push side mount, you'll certainly want to use this. And here's what it looks like. Okay. A cush side arm is really a great option when you have an installation that's going to look like this. Sorry, I'm struggling with this. Because the main arm, the forearm, is going to dead stop against this rubber insert. Really great possibility for installing closers that can take a tremendous amount of abuse when you have a cush style arm. They do, of course, offer the standard regular arm that would be tri-packed, which would have a separate parallel arm bracket. That closer, of course, you can install in a regular arm mount, a top jam mount, or a parallel arm mount. Then, of course, you'll get your bolt package completely. Bolts for everything, machine screws, wood screws, Allen wrench to configure your valve settings. You'll get your 5th hole spacer should you need it. We'll talk about a 5th hole spacer later. It'll come with a secondary package because there is a PA bracket and that 5th hole spacer is there. Let's talk about it now in case I forget. If the depth of your frame is too small to permit this screw, or this screw for that matter, to hit the soffit of the frame, you would use that 5th hole spacer bracket underneath to run that screw up into the rabbet of the frame. That's a 5th hole spacer. Okay. Now let's move into a let's complete the dimensional review. Now let's go back and take a dimension of the cover. Overall, about 12 1/4 overall width, overall height, about 3 3/8. Overall projection, about 2 1/4. Now the arm, I guess just for the sake of taking some dimensions, there's really no reason that any of this is important, but an overall length of the arm is about 26.5 inch. The forearm overall length to the center of the elbow is about 10.5. The main arm from the center line to the center line of the 2 points is about 11.5. Then, of course, your parallel arm bracket, center to center, will be the difference at about 4 7/8. 4.5. Okay. Now, since we've got this arm up here that's non-handed, you can install this for a left-hand door or a right-hand door, or left-hand reverse door or a right-hand reverse door, however they swing. You're literally just going to unthread it. What you didn't see is I had already started unthreading it. And then just reposition it on the side that you require. You got L and R that you can see stamped there. L and R. Left hand or right hand. L would be for a right hand reverse door. You get in there and just tighten it down. It's going to be a number 2 Phillips. Tighten that down and we're good to go. Now, the next part of this video is we're going to go over the overview of this closer so you know what you're getting, what this closer is capable of, what it's intended to do, etc. So let's launch into that. Okay, let's go over the particulars of what this closer is. First of all, the 441 series from Paramount is a heavy-duty grade 1 closer. That means that it is listed to, it's either 800,000 or 1,000,000 cycles. I understood it to be 1,000,000 cycles. That may have been changed to 800,000 cycles. This is a non-handed closer and has a cush and stop arm, non-hold open. The cush really is a reference to the fact that it is a parallel arm mount. And then, of course, the stop is a reference to that insert that's going to make a positive dead stop for you at the prescribed degree of opening. This is adjustable on its spring tension from 1 to 6. So you'll be able to handle a very light door all the way up to a very heavy door. And you'll be able to do so in an application where you have a closer that's rated for, has been tested to a minimum of a grade 1 rating, I believe 1,000,000 cycles. The spring on this is factory set to a size 3, and when we get to the installation instructions, we'll talk about how that needs to be adjusted. Power adjustable arm bracket. Power adjustable arm bracket. That doesn't apply to this closer, to my knowledge. A regular arm, you can flip the arm orientation over, and the center line of where the forearm comes out of, when you turn it closer to the hinge, will give you a little additional closing force. I don't believe this applies to that, as neither does the following line, the tri-pack for regular parallel arm or top jam mount. I'll have that removed by the time you see this video. This can go to a large degree of opening, and we'll touch on that when we get to the installation instructions. Full body plastic cover included. Precision cast iron housing. A lot of people like the closer because of its weight. It turns out that cast iron is a good product to use for the type of product that this is, that it has internal raceways that have been machined into it. However, there are others that would argue that other lighter base materials that are not cast, are machined, will give a superior overall performance. First of all, because of the better precision over the fact that it's not cast, number one. Number two, because the body itself is physically lighter. This is a 14-pound piece of hardware, basically, so you must be mindful when calculating everything that's happening on the opening, that you've got an additional 14 pounds in that regard alone, even though the door's not carrying all of it, but nonetheless. Rack and pinion mechanism, it's literally a rack, a slide bar with teeth in it, and then a pinion, a gear wheel, that when the closer body, the spindle moves, it will compress the spring that's down in the body, giving you the ability to store energy and then to release energy. High quality non-gumming and non-freezing hydraulic fluid. The fluid will probably not freeze, but an exterior application that's in a single-digit temperature scenario is probably going to cause havoc on the O-rings that are on the inside of it, so it's not certainly intended to be installed on the exterior of an opening. Separate adjustable sweep and latch valves. Yes, you can control the 0 to 10, the 10 to 85 or so degree independently. We'll go over that when we get to the installation instructions. Optional hold open is available, has a 10-year warranty, is UL listed, which is important because that means you can install it onto a fire-rated door. I do not see any markings of the, oh it is, forgive me, right here. UL listing technically needs to be obvious to the authority having jurisdiction so that if he were to inspect that opening, not if he were to, but when he is to inspect that opening, it's readily visible to him as a listed product, has been found and concluded to be in compliance with the requirements of a fire-rated opening, and is in a Duranautic finish, and that is the dark brown finish that you see. Also available in aluminum, of course. There is a link to the product brochure, and let's look at that next. Now, the link to the product brochure is a summary of what we've just discussed, except that there's some additional information, like the specification on page 2, which states the closer is intended for interior or exterior doors, multi-size with spring power adjustment from 1 to 6. Closer shall be surface-mounted, full-cycle hydraulic rack and pinion type with cast iron body. Closer shall be supplied with a non-handed plastic cover. Closer shall project from the face of the installation no more than 2 1/4 from the mounting surface. Closer shall have 2 valves to separately control sweep and latch. Hydraulic fluid shall be non-gumming, non-freezing. Closer shall have an independent valve to control the adjustable cushioning back check, which it does. Brackets shall be supplied to permit regular top jam and parallel arm or parallel arm installation. Closer shall be supplied with all necessary mounting fasteners. Drop plates shall be required if the door and frame design cannot accommodate a standard installation. Refer to the parts and accessories. So that specifications paragraph is literally provided so that you can use it to adequately and accurately convey to other people what it is you want. And admittedly, Paramount or whomever wrote that paragraph to exclude others and include only their closer. There's language in there that may disqualify another closer from being used. That's the way the specification game is done when it's written. There's nothing on page 1 that's new. Page 2 will show you the selection guide. BC, 441BC. That's going to be a multi-sized back check closer. We'll talk about back check in a moment. You can do a friction style hold open arm, not compliant with fire rated doors. You can do a cush type arm that we're talking about here, non-hold open. You can do a cush and stop arm with a hold open as well. So Your hold opens would be non-fire rated doors only, so be mindful of that. Moving down, there are some dimensional properties there, and that's a great place to start if you are saying, I need to replace my door closer. That's where you start. Start to make sure that the footprint of the holes that are in your door match what you've already have compared to this. You don't want to have to drill new holes. There's no reason to do that. Because regardless of where the holes are located in your door, not regardless, but almost regardless, assuming the door closer hasn't been discontinued forever, we can supply you with a new closer. And in the event where it's been discontinued, we can probably repair it for you, so keep that in mind. The bottom third of that page are your parts and accessories, where we're going to get into the drop plates, and you can read the description of those drop plates. Suffice it to say that if you are trying to install this closer on an exterior outswinging door in a top jam mount, and you only have 2-inch of top rail, you're going to need the 18 TJ mount, where you need a minimum of 1 3/4 headspace to get the 18 TJ mounted. So the plate goes on the header, the body gets threaded to that plate, and then the rest of the installation is standard. And you need a drop plate when you don't have enough real estate, whether it be the header of the frame or the top rail of the door because of really glass that's there, or the construction of the door. Your top rail just isn't big enough for whatever reason. You need to come up with a drop plate, and then they take the mounting holes and move them to where they do need to be, and then give you drilled and tapped holes along with really short screws to mount that closer body to, allowing you to complete the installation. Also, what's there are all the regular arms. The cush, that's there. The cushion stop. The regular arm. The cush stop and hold open. What they don't show there is the friction hold open arm. That could be an unintentional omission, or it could not, or perhaps it's no longer offered at all, which could be the case. Then the sex nuts and bolts are listed there. This closer does not include sex bolts, so be mindful of that. If you need sex bolts, you're going to need to pick those up, because if you're putting this into a gypsum or mineral core door, you will have to through bolt these. Meaning, and that your door has not been properly reinforced. So this part covers the product brochure. The next thing to do is to start to dissect the installation instructions. Let's move to that now. Now let's jump into the installation instructions. Generally with door closers, you get 4 pages of installation instructions when it's a standard closer. You'll get one closer that, one page generally is an overview of the parts that you've received, a bill of materials, so that you can make sure that you're in possession of everything you'll need to complete the installation. That page may also give you an overview of how to set the spring tension based on the size of the door that you're dealing with. May give an overview of the mounting methods, and then the other overall information. The other three pages will give you the information necessary for the 3 different types of mount: regular arm, top jam, and parallel arm. Generally, you have 4 pages of installation instructions. The installation instructions here may have about 6, indeed 6. You do indeed have the 3 pages for the standard installation: regular arm, parallel, and top jam. You won't need any of those for this, because we're doing a cush stop mount, which represents the last 2 pages of the installation instructions. So what we'll need to discuss in this installation is going to be page 1, which will show you how to set the spring tension here with the Allen wrench included. There are 2 Allen wrenches. There's one for the valves, then there's a larger one for the spring tension. We'll take that and just poke it out of the bag, and that will go in here, seat that, and then you'll be able to turn that and affect the change. Like they said earlier, it comes preset for a size 3 spring condition. And a size 3 spring condition would be typical for a regular arm mount for a full-size 3070 door. If you are going to do a parallel arm like we are for sure in this closer, you're going to increase that to a size 4, and that will certainly put you in the range of about 3 turns clockwise to increase the preset tension on the spring. Turns required are approximate because of various door conditions and locations, how it's been installed. You may have to further adjust it, the spring tension that is, to suit the requirements of what's happening here. Now, they do also then touch on the valves. The bottom line is we're going to talk about all this stuff, but go to the final adjusting after you physically have it installed. Don't make any changes till then. It might work perfect. Now, something of note. This closer is very capable of being a handicap compliant door closer. And it is on board. You'll notice in the chart that you're going to turn 6 turns counterclockwise to get to that 5 pounds of force maximum required for an ADA compliant door closer. The old saying goes, with a reduced opening force is a reduced closing force. So as you reduce that closing force down to 5 pounds, you are inherently having a smaller amount of closing force. It could be that building conditions do not really permit a strict adherence to 5 pounds of closing force, because you might have an air pressure condition coming through and you need to increase the spring tension set on the closer so that it can release and close the door. But it is a fully ADA compliant door closer, is the bottom line. Looking at the rest of page 1, they then define the valves that are on board, of which there are actually 4 on this closer, and they don't call out the 4th one. But let's look at the ones that they do call out. So looking at your installation instructions, you have your latch closing speed, you have your closing speed, which is called sweep, and then you have your back check. So let's define these. The latch closing speed, shown in the control range figure, is basically from 0 to 10 or 0 to 12 degrees. The closing or the sweep portion of the closer, and the closing valve or sweep valve, it's also known. You've got latch and sweep. That's generally how they're known. These valves aren't identified. There is one Achilles heel that I'll go over with you in a moment on these, I've noticed. Sweep or closing is from 12 or so, 10 to about 80 degrees. Back check is from 80 out further, maybe 120, something like that. Could be more, could be 140. That kicks in when you have an exterior door that swings out and a gust of wind grabs it and just wants to take that sucker and arrest it and move it all the way out. Well, that valve will physically route oil so as to arrest that aggressive movement. Doesn't stop it, but will significantly arrest the speed at which the door moves. And if you were to test that when you get it installed and not forcibly, but intentionally move it through its cycle, you'll notice, bam, that's where it kicks in. And you can control that as well. So your back check, your sweep, your latch, okay? All of those 3 valves you will work on after the fact. If it's an interior door and it never goes past 90, you're not going to touch the back check valve because it won't come into play. This being a dead stop style arm, the back check will be helpful if you have like a 120 degree dead stop on your installation. Well, that back check can begin to arrest the movement of that closer before 90 degrees, so it's very helpful. An uncontrolled door is dangerous not only to property but to people as well. And I've certainly seen plenty of times where the wind just caught the door. I've seen it to where it's ripped a door open so far, the door caught the outside corner of the masonry, continued to act like a lever. That fulcrum point of the masonry then moved the entire frame off of its installation. So you really want to control that as best as possible. And a dead stop closer arm like this, along with the back check valve, is a good way to head in that direction. Now, I had mentioned an Achilles heel, but also another valve. There's a valve on the back of that closer. If you're doing, and it's not called out anywhere in the installation instructions that I've been able to see. It's not referred to anywhere. And I'm looking to confirm that that's the case. They do show it on the door closer adjustment on page 5. They refer to it, but they don't tell you what it's for that I can see. What that's for is, and if you're looking at the lower left-hand corner of page 5, please, 2 things. This valve is that when you have, leave it alone. Except if you have a parallel arm installation, I understand that you might want to take that and turn the valve clockwise and close it down. That permits the fluid to act more properly when you're doing a parallel arm installation. Because the way that a closer, the compound nature of how a closer arm is when it is in a parallel arm orientation, is inherently different. So in order for me to kind of help illustrate what's happening, the forearm, to get the door moved out significantly, it's actually not turning the spindle very much. But if I were to do a regular arm mount, it's moving significantly. The rotation of the spindle is inherently different when it's a regular arm or a top jam versus a parallel arm. That valve is meant to help the closer route fluid internally more appropriately for a parallel arm installation. Leave it alone. Unless you notice that your control is not really good on your parallel arm installation, which this one is, close it down. They don't refer to it at all. They don't tell you what it is. They show that it's there. Now, the Achilles heel. You'll notice that there is a circle with a line through it, and then showing the valve and the fluid. These valves are not staked. That means that no one's gone in and peened this area over to prevent you from unintentionally removing the valve too far, and then you cycle it and the pressure of the oil forces the set screw out. It goes flying. Oil gets everywhere. Yourself, the door, the frame, the closer, the floor. Everyone does it once in their career. I know I did very early on, and it was the only time I've done it. So these valves aren't staked, so be mindful. Don't rotate them out any further than necessary. And I would be very cautious of making any changes whatsoever to them. And if you did so, I probably wouldn't relieve them counterclockwise more than 2 full rotations. So be mindful of that, because this closer has that one aspect to it that could have been done better. So we've covered page 1. You know what the closing valves do, all 4 of them, the control valves. You know how to set the spring tension. We're not going to go into pages 2, 3, and 4 because that will talk about the particular mount that you're doing. This is a cush arm installation only. What is universal against all of these door closer installations, regardless of the type, is the dimension that you're installing the door closer in relationship to the center line of the hinge pin. The vertical axis of pivoting of the hinge is where you measure to the screw holes. And we're going to go into that right now. And that stands for, that means, that relates to, that stands for whatever the hinge that you're using. A swing clear hinge, a full mortise standard hinge, continuous hinge. You've got to determine the center line of the pivot, and they're not showing that exactly. They're showing it to the rabbet of the frame, but that dimension is so incredibly close, it really doesn't, not that it really doesn't matter, but it really doesn't matter. And here is an important item to review about we're looking at page 5, by the way. they don't tell us what degree of opening is going to be accomplished based on that 6.5-inch dimension from the edge of the door to this first hole. Let's scroll up and go back to page 4. Okay, they don't tell us there at all what that's for. The bottom line is you can tailor the ultimate degree of opening based on that dimension. And based on my experience, if we're dealing with depending on the installation, in a parallel arm fashion, the 6.5-inch dimension is going to give you theoretically the ability to go to 180 degrees. Okay. If you wanted that closer to stop at about 90 degrees, and what Paramount needs to do is to amend their installation instructions. If you want that closer to go to about 90 degrees and physically reach the limit of the arm where it can go no further and the door will stop, you're going to make that 6.5-inch into about 9.5-inch. And if you wanted to go, which would give you 90, so 6.5 equals 180, 9.5 equals 90, 9.5, 6.5, 90, 180. If we wanted to go to 120, let's go to 8-inch. 6.5 plus inch and a half is 8, 8 plus inch and a half is 9.5. So now you've got some dimensions to play with. I don't see a reason to template the unit for 180 degree if you're not going there at all, because the rotation of the spindle is directly related to the position of the arm and then therefore the door and then therefore the valves and how you have them all defined. So for 90 degrees, go to 9.5-inch on that first dimension. For 120 degrees, go to 8-inch. For 180 degrees, go to 6.5-inch. The closer the body is to the vertical axis of pivoting, the greater the degree of opening. And those are basically, that is basically a summary of what I would do based on my experience. And it may list somewhere in here, and I'm looking at the description of what's happening, and I don't see anywhere where they're telling us that it's 180 degrees, what it's being templated for. So let's take a look at page the page 4 here. We see all the other dimensions. The 6.5, we talked about that being 8 or 9.5, depending on the degree of opening. The rest of the drawing you can easily lay out. My suggestion is, I have 2 suggestions. Mark all of your holes, stop, do a reality check. Don't do like I did 100 years ago, client, late on a Friday. I put a hole through the door, looking at the parallel arm template, and I was doing a regular arm template, and it was in the wrong location. Do a reality check. Double check everything. Make sure, that's number 1. Number 2, be absolutely positive that your vertical dimensions are accurate. The horizontal, as we discussed, isn't going to really corrupt your installation. But if you're off on the vertical, if you've ever walked through a door and you've heard a clanking, that's the arm hitting the top of the door, and that's because that dimension's not accurate. You want to make sure that that's completely accurate, the vertical dimension, the 2 3/16 from the soffit down to the center line of the first holes. The rest you can lay out. The parallel arm dimensions are there as well. Where you have 6.5-inch, you'll have 7 7/8 to the position of the arm. Okay, center line. If you're going to make an adjustment on that 6.5, be sure to make the same adjustment on the arm location, obviously. If you're going to be doing more than one closer, like maybe 3, make yourself a template. Get a block of wood. and adjust it so that you can slap it up into the corner and quickly mark your holes. It's worth the time to make one template if you're going to do 3 closers. It really is. Then you've got a template. You can mark it with the closer that you've used, that it's for, store that away, and forever thereafter, you know that you're not only going to do them quick, but you're going to do them accurately. That's the key on that. Then when it comes to the dead stop portion, you can see how you're going to reposition the stop, as I demonstrated much earlier in this video. Here, you'll move that over to here should you need to. Okay. What's really important to note is when you're installing the closer, what side of this goes towards the hinge. It's not the same for all installations. You're going to have this towards the hinges on a parallel arm, but when you get to a top jam, that's going to be different. When you get to a regular arm, that's going to be different. So regular arm and top jam, this is going to be pointed towards the hinge, but when you do a parallel arm, you're flipping it around. I've installed it upside down and wondering why the door will only open a 1/4 inch or a 1 inch, realizing I've got the door closer body backwards. And not all of these were done very early in my career, I have to admit. But the point of the matter is you learn as a result of making that first initial mistake. But the most important thing is a reality check. So we've gone over the mechanical installation, where to place it. We've gone over your spring tension, your 4 valve settings. Get the closer, cycle it a couple of times, make any adjustments necessary. That's the bottom line. You probably won't need to adjust very much. If you're installing this on a 4-foot door that's 8 foot tall, yeah, you're going to need to make some adjustments. But if it's 3.0, 3.4, 2'10", probably not going to have to adjust very much. Make one adjustment. Cycle the door at least 2 times. Observe, make further adjustments. And that's what you do. It's handy to keep the Allen wrenches around because you will probably need them. What some guys do is they'll tape them to the inside of the cover. Okay? People aren't up there pulling the covers off. They are screwed to the body. And then, as time goes on, you can make your adjustments without even needing the installation instructions. Yeah, you know what? They actually do show us here. If you're using a parallel arm bracket, that valve on the back, turn it clockwise, close it down. That's what it's for. They don't put that in writing, but it is, to someone like me who knows what it does, it's obvious what they're trying to infer. And I must have not have understood that as well as I should have earlier, but that's clearly what it is referring to. So only adjust it if you're doing a parallel arm bracket installation, which this closer is, this client is the bottom line. Finally, the name Paramount is synonymous with good quality customer service. That's number one. They also have very good quality imported builder's hardware. If you are doing exit devices, door closers, hinges, and lock sets, Paramount deserves your review. Why? A confluence of excellent customer service, and you know who I'm talking about at Paramount, excellent customer service, in stock, fast shipping, tremendous value, quality, a confluence of all of those things. You might be doing a strip mall and you're doing doors and frames on the back of a strip mall, and you know what spec the owner is saying, that's too much money, I'm not doing it. I hear that all the time. Give me something that I can get some good value out of. I'll turn them on to Paramount immediately because of that good quality material. Would I like these valves to be staked? Yes. Back in the old days, there was no such thing. Just don't turn it back too much. That's the bottom line. Would I like the installation instructions to include some more dimensional properties like normal installation instructions? Yes. I bet they'll get to that at some point. What I didn't look at was the actual paper that comes with it. And indeed, I don't see any of that information on here at all. Oh, no, I lied. They do show it on the paper template. Right there. Oh, we guessed correctly as well. There you go. So they do show it. That's handy. I'm going to have to look into that on the uploaded installation instructions because I don't see that template anywhere here. Got it. Okay. Finally, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Paramount products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. If you have more than an occasional need for good quality imported builder's hardware, I would suggest that you review the Paramount catalog. My name is Richard. Thank you very much.